All right, guys, well, welcome to the Hunter's Quest YouTube channel. Today, I'm gonna walk you through mounting a scope on a new rifle. I do not claim to be an expert. This is a hunting rifle. This is a very nice hunting rifle, and I'm putting a very nice optic on it, but I'm not a precision rifle shooter. I'm not an expert. I have learned a few things along the way, and I have done this before with pretty good results. And just to let you know where this all kind of began, you may or may not, or you may in the future see this random piece of wood on the background of my set. And this right here is a section of a tree that I took off as a reminder, because you can see it has a nice little spot where a bullet went through the side of it. And basically this buck right here behind me, I hunted him for 2 years, and the first year I saw him, he was every bit as big as he is there. One of the biggest deer I'd seen in my local area there, and I'd hunted hard all year. Finally, he had a hot doe behind my stand one day, and I come from my background is a bow and shotgun only county. So I didn't grow up around rifles. I didn't know much about rifles or accuracy or any of that stuff. I kind of just was like, you just throw a scope on there, kind of zero it in, you're good to go. Didn't really give it much thought, which is crazy looking back. But anyway, I had this shotgun set up. This is a rifle, this slug gun. But I hadn't checked it. I hadn't checked any of the components on it in years, and basically saw this buck and shot and missed, hit the tree. And I did, thank God, end up getting another opportunity in the buck the next year. But as you guys probably know, that hurt a lot. So that was the kind of turning point, and I kind of kept this thing as a reminder, because that was the turning point. I was like, you know what? No more. I am done missing deer. Because what I did was I looked at my shotgun after, and the little base I had for my scope on there was just completely, you could just jiggle it with your hands, and I didn't even check that. So it's kind of embarrassing, but I said, you know what, no more. I'm not going to miss any more deer because of stuff I can control, like, not checking that kind of stuff. So yeah, especially when I got into Western hunting, you're putting a lot of time and resources into, going on these hunts, and you got to just control everything you can. So you got to make sure your weapon system is ready to go. So this video is for, guys who were like me, who maybe want to step up their game in accuracy. This is not really intended for experts. If you're an expert, you're probably not watching this anyway. And I'll probably be doing something that's going to aggravate you, but I don't really care. I needed to do this anyway. So I figure, what the heck, I might as well make a video about it. Maybe you can help some folks out. So I'm kind of approaching this from a standpoint of someone who's a beginner, who wants to step up their game. Maybe you just got your first Western hunting rig, or you got your old rig, but you want to put new optic on it and just step up your accuracy game. And I do got to give a shout out to my buddy Ned. If you've seen the Kodiak video or heard some of my podcasts, you heard me talk about Ned. He helped me get into Western hunting, and he is ex-Navy Special Warfare, and just very knowledgeable about weapon systems. And he actually taught me a lot of this stuff I'm about to share with you, and really helped me go from kind of just slapping together a little rifle rig that was like so-so to, now I'm not saying I'm an amazing marksman or anything, but I can hit pretty consistently out to 500, which is, good for where I'm at right now. So anyway, and I'm hoping to get better at that, but it starts with your weapons system. And, every single component you put on a rifle is going to have some effect on your accuracy, and it's usually going to have a negative effect. So you just got to make sure every single component is the best you can afford, or you can get at that time reasonably. So it's really important that you just have good stuff. The other part of this thing is, it's not. I used to be intimidated by this, and it's really not that hard. You just kind of have to know what you're doing a little bit, and you have to have the right tools. It's just like any other job. You're not going to do it right unless you have the right tools to get the job done. That being said, if you're investing some money into a hunting rig, into a nice optic, a nice rifle, it's worth spending the extra money on like, for example, this gun vise here. and all these tools I'm going to take you through. So, you know, that's the biggest thing too I did kind of in the beginning was I'd get excited, I got a new gun, new stuff, and I wouldn't have all the proper tools ready to go, and I would kind of start and get ahead of myself, and then, you know, end up stripping out a screw or not having the Loctite or whatever, and just having a headache. So before you even start, just like any good like technician will tell you, make sure you got all the tools you need, a good workspace, starting with this, a nice level table or workbench. I want to make sure it's level and solid. And then obviously your gun vise here, and then, you know, your rifle, you know, this is a Seekins Precision Havoc Element that I just got. I'm super excited about this rifle. It's an amazing rifle. It just came in the mail. It's in 300 Win Mag. Really blessed to have this. And then, you know, if you're gonna spend money on a rifle, you know, they say spend as much or even sometimes a lot more on your optic. So friends over at Loophole hooked me up with this. This is a VX6 HD, 4-24 by 52. So it's a 34 mil tube. It's a great scope. It's probably the best scope I've ever had. It's got illuminated reticle. But that being said, is you know, a lot of guys will say, you know, you're much better off with a cheap rifle and a really nice piece of glass than the other way around. So do not buy a nice rifle and slap some garbage scope on there. You will regret it. If anything, spend more money on your optic and less on the rifle. So that being said, another thing is you want to make sure you got you know, some really high quality scope rings. Like I said, every single component you put on here is going to have an effect one way or the other. And I made that mistake before. My first trip to Alaska, I mean, to be fair, my whole weapon system was kind of not quite dialed, but I had some really just crappy rings and bases. And about a week before the trip, I noticed my scope was sliding and had to just completely redo everything. I freaked out. It almost messed me up. Ended up getting it taken care of, but you don't want to have that going on. So you want to make sure you get everything done right the first time. First step is gathering your tools. So the tools I got here, you know, I got this Wheeler Engineering level set. I can't remember what the official name is, but it's a barrel clamp level and then like another little reference level here, which I will show you that. Some Q-tips. You know, I have a lapping bar, which is also from Wheeler. Also, you can get a kit from Wheeler that has all the stuff in there, but this is the lapping compound. It's 220 grit lapping compound, and I will get into that. You need some acetone. I raided my wife's nail polish stuff and got her nail polish remover. So need some acetone. In that lapping kit also came these, the scope alignment tool, which I will show you how we use that as well. Got some gun oil, a Wheeler Engineering fat wrench. This is a torque screwdriver, basically so you can make sure you're getting the proper amount of torque on your screws without over torquing. Another mistake I made in my early days. And some oil, a little bit of tape, paper towels, and obviously you want your rings, bases, optic, rifle, all that good stuff. So let's just jump right in here. The first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to degrease all my screws and components. So anytime you have you know, rings and bases coming from a factory, there is a decent chance that they're going to have some just oil on them from the manufacturing process. Basically, the reason you want to degrease stuff is just because, like I said, from the manufacturing process, a lot of times you'll just have a little bit of residual grease on there, and that can affect the ability of the components to get a firm grip in there with the Loctite, and can you know, cause them to jiggle out later after, you know, lots of shots and whatnot. So this rifle has the base, as you can see, already built onto the frame of the rifle. That's pretty nice that Seekins does that. Now, if it was not like that, you would want to also degrease all of your screws and whatnot to go in here, and I'll walk you through some of that stuff as well. The reason I'm doing this first is so that you got plenty of time for this stuff to properly dry while I'm kind of doing my other stuff here. So you're gonna go back with my Q-tip here, dip it in the acetone. I'm gonna degrease all this stuff. This is a step that a lot of guys kind of overlook or don't do, but like I said, you gotta control everything you can and do everything as thoroughly as possible. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to the animals you're hunting to make sure this is as good as you can get it. All right. Now, if you're dealing with a rifle that doesn't have the ring base already on there, that's another place where you don't want to skimp. You want to get nice bases and rings. And what you would do in that circumstance is you would also want to degrease all those components and the holes as well. And then you'd apply with a Q-tip a small amount of oil in between your base and your receiver of your rifle, just to make sure it doesn't get any rust in there. And then you would torque down those screws. Next, make sure we got all the acetone off of our components. I'll grab a dry Q-tip here. And just make sure they're nice and dry. Okay, so we're just gonna finger tighten those on there. Now just from experience, I know that I like to have my optic set pretty far back on the rifle. Now you do wanna make sure it's not too far back, especially with you know, large caliber, because you don't wanna get bit by that scope. Now, at first, what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna put my Loctite yet, and I'm just gonna like finger tighten, or just, you know, I'm gonna get these things tight enough on here that they will hold in place, but I'm not Loctiting them and like cinching them down yet, because I wanna make sure I got my scope placed on there where I want it first. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the bolt and just set this aside for now. Okay, so next thing you're gonna do is make sure that your scope is, you know, in the right spot where you want it, basically. So again, I have a Leupold VX6 HD 4-24 by 52. It's a 34 mil tube. And you know, that's something also that I kind of screwed up in the beginning, was, you know, you got different tube diameters. Like, that's how much of a beginner I was in the beginning. I didn't even know there was different tube diameters of scopes. You know, probably sounds stupid, but you want to make sure all your tools are the right size. So actually for this, you know, this is my first scope in a 34 mil tube, so I had to order, you know, new alignment tool and all that, because I didn't have that size. I'm gonna go ahead and put the tops on here just so I don't drop this thing off, just to keep the thing from dropping on the floor. Basically, you want to take the rifle and shoulder the rifle in a position that's comfortable for you with your eyes closed, okay? So you want to shoulder the rifle with your eyes closed, get to a spot that feels comfortable where you'd want to shoot naturally, and then open your eyes, and you should be able to see in that scope without any of the black. The sight picture should be clear. Now, right now, it's actually pretty good for me. I'm going to test it. I'm going to come out and see how far I can go before I start losing, and how close I can get in. So it's about in the middle, honestly. So it's actually kind of pretty close to where I want it to be, which is right about there. So what I'm gonna do actually is take my pencil, just make tiny little marks here on my scope, just so I can remember where she's at. So now that I got my scope and figured out where I need the bases to go on here, I'm gonna go ahead and take the scope off and set it to the side for now. And remove these screws here. Another really important piece of, I guess you could call it a tool, that I forgot to mention is blue Loctite. It's a thread locker, blue, number 242 from Loctite. Just kind of the standard everybody uses for this type of job. Make sure you shake it up nice and good. So you don't want to put just a dab of your blue Loctite onto first base screw. Now you want to make sure in any of these type of screws you don't just like crank down one of them and leave the other one there. So you want to get that thing like finger tight and just leave it finger tight for now until we get the other one in. So we got our Loctite on our second one. Now, at this point, you want to make sure you check the manufacturer specs for your torque. You know, I'm double checking here. It looks like it says the ring clamp is 50 to 55 inch pounds. I'm going to crank this guy up to 50. Make sure you get your specs correct, but double checking, actually per sequence, it needs to be between 50 and 55. And you want to make sure you get enough Loctite on there to get it done, but you don't want to like overdo it and have Loctite spewing everywhere. You really just need like a drop of Loctite, to be honest. And it's very important to Loctite your stuff. You know, just over time, the percussion of firing, especially heavy caliber, even if it's torqued down, it's going to eventually want to come loose. So this thread locker, you really want to make sure that you use that and use the appropriate one. Again, that's the blue 242 Loctite. So, all right, so now we got our bases on here. And the next step is going to be the lapping process. So before you lap, you know, I recommend taking your alignment tools here. And what you do is you basically set these guys into your bases, okay? And you probably want to put the tops on there, but I'm just showing you guys what's, so basically, if you can see, there's these two tiny little points right here. And I'll try to zoom in here. It's basically telling you if these points are touching or virtually touching or extremely close to touching, that your scope rings are aligned properly. Now, if they're not aligned properly, the lapping process, which is what I'm going to show you now, is going to iron out most of your minor alignment issues. Now, if it's just completely way off, this is where you want to make sure you're buying quality components. You know, if you've got a quality rifle with good bases and good rings, you know, it shouldn't be a huge deal. You know, my Weatherby and my Tally rings in my last setup was just fractions and fractions off, a little bit of lapping, and it was perfect, no problem. This Seekins, I gotta say, This is out of the box Seekins rings and the Seekins rifle. Completely out of the box. I haven't touched it at all, and it's almost perfectly aligned, which is pretty cool. It's saying something about Seekins. As you can see, if it wasn't, it would be, you know, you'd be able to see a difference in those 2 points, or they'd be off a little bit. Again, if it's major, you may want to first consider some new rings or a new base. If that's not helping, you know, you might have an issue with your rifle. Might have to be re-tapped and drilled. Hopefully not. But most of the time, if you got quality stuff, you might have it a little bit off, but it won't be too bad. And you can fix that with lapping, which is what I'm about to show you. And some people don't lap if they feel like their thing is aligned, their rings are aligned fine. I think it's helpful because even if you don't really have any alignment issues, it allows a better, basically grip from your rings onto your scope. It causes little like micro abrasions in the metal that will cause it just to have more surface area and more grip on there. So I like to do it. I think it's worthwhile. So I'm going to set my alignment tool to the side here for now. Next, we're going to take our 220 grit lapping compound, which is basically, you could think of it like liquid sandpaper. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply some of this onto my rings. Okay, not too much. Then I'm going to take my lapping tool, and again, you want to make sure you get the right size. If you got a 1-inch tube, you need a 1-inch alignment tool and 1-inch lapping tool. Same with 30 mil or 34 mil, whatever you got. Set that guy in there. Now we're going to put our tops on here. And you want to make sure you don't get lapping compound into your onto your screws or into the holes, because that grit, you just don't want that in there. You can kind of mess up your threading. So this setup, I have 4 screws on each set of rings. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you do it in kind of like a figure 8 type pattern. So you'll tighten the top left and then the bottom right, right? And then the top right and then the bottom left. That allows for the ring to go on evenly and not be lopsided in one direction or the other. So you want to do a little bit more, figure 4. And again, we're not going to go super tight here because we're just lapping. All right, now, just to give you a better visual of what's actually happening when you're lapping. So you're actually removing material from the inside of your rings with this lapping compound, which is basically, like I said, like liquid sandpaper. So, you know, you're gonna do it a little bit and then you're gonna tighten your rings down to get more contact on the lapping tool. It should be a little bit tough to move this thing at first, but then as you go and more material is removed, it'll get easier to go, it'll get easier. And this is, like I said, less important with this setup for me right now because the alignment was already so good on there. However, if your alignment's not great, this is a really important step and you want to really make sure you get this done well. And I'll show you how to check it here. But I'm gonna go up and down, side to side. Okay. All right, at this point, I am going to remove the tops here and check on the progress of the lapping. So if you can see, the black coating on the metal has started to come off, and you can see that the lapping is doing its job. So usually they say about 75% of that surface area should be removed like that. So that's how you know you're kind of done. So that honestly looks like about 75% to me. And you'll be able to tell on rings that aren't quite aligned, it'll be kind of more of a darker area in one spot. This one, you can see that the darker areas are kind of evenly distributed, which is probably why the alignment is so good. And one thing I did forget is at this point, before you take that second one off, you're gonna want to put a piece of tape on your tops here, and just with a Sharpie, just mark which ones are which, because if you get the two tops mixed up, it'll screw up your alignment. So I'm gonna put F for front right here, R for rear right here, just to be sure. And you can write it right on your base if you want, but I'm gonna use tape. And it's helpful to put a little arrow facing the front of the gun as well, just so you remember, because again, you don't want to get them reversed either. So that's how I know that I got the right one in the right spot. And this is just one of those type of jobs where you just got to devote some time to it. You do not want to do this when you're in any kind of time crunch. You just want to set aside the time, do it when the kids are asleep, or if the wife's got to run some errands, you got some time or whatever. You don't want to rush this. You got to really, it's attention to detail is very important if you want to do the rifle justice. Okay, great. As you can see here, pretty much all the surface area of that thing is lapped off. So that's going to give a really strong grip onto my optic, and whatever tiny little inconsistencies there were in the alignment should be 100% gone now. At this point, I am going to get my Wheeler Engineering leveling kit here. I'm going to throw this guy onto my barrel, this clamp, barrel clamp, I guess they call it. Make sure it's snug. And I'm going to put my other level right here. Now, all I want to do is first ensure that this reference level on the back here, and it is magnetized, and a lot of times it'll magnetize, but for some reason this base isn't made of a magnetic material. But it's okay, I'll put it right on there, and then I'll just get my gun. I'm gonna loosen this. She'll hold that tight. I'll loosen this guy and just work that thing till it's nice and level. This thing's on here, so I'm gonna use this knob here to adjust this to make sure she's level. Get that bubble in center. So now I got both bubbles centered. At this point I can remove this guy, and I'm going to place my optic on here with the reference marks made with my pencil earlier. Make sure I'm still level there, and then I'm going to put this onto my scope. Now, this will allow me to get my scope on there level. All right, so now there we go, she's level. Since I have my tops nice and taped up, I can remember exactly which one goes on which and which side. Okay, now again, You want to check your manufacturer for their specs in terms of torque. Seekins is telling me 20 inch-pounds. So, where's my, oh yeah, grab my fat wrench here. Make sure it's not set at 50 anymore. And bring her all the way down to 20. Okay. So we got it set like 20 plus. I mean, it's basically 20, but maybe on the higher side of 20. And pretty easy now. All I got to do, we're almost done actually. Again, just a little bit of Loctite. Now, I like the rings that have 4 screws each. I just think it's just more secure. You know, the old classic ones kind of had 1 screw on each side. I think 9 times out of 10 you're fine with that, but this just adds a little extra security for me. I like it. And here we go. Start again that figure 4. So I'm going to start with my top right. And then, or sorry, top right. Sorry, top left, bottom right. Top right, bottom left. We want to make sure these things are evenly clamped down. You don't want to clamp down on one side and loose on the other, right? If you have any alignment issues, before you do this step, after you lap, put your alignment tool back on and check again that it's aligned. Now again, I'm just going to get that started, and I'm going to go over here to this side and do this side. Same figure 4 pattern. There we go, first one. Okay, there she is. And I'm going to take a dry Q-tip here and just, if I got any residual kind of Loctite that came out or anything, I'm just going to get that. And then I'll give it a visual check here. I'm going to put my bolt back in. Everything is working properly. Now all I gotta do basically is bore sight this baby, and she's ready to take out to the range. Visually, everything feels great. Looks good. Just gonna visually kind of inspect here. Everything looks right. Now, as far as bore sighting goes, you know, I in the past had messed around with, you know, laser bore sighters and different stuff like that, but there's really a much easier way to do it, and it works. It works just as good, I think, as the laser bore sighters. Saves some money, and it's much easier, less of a headache. Basically what you're going to do, it only works on bolt action guns, but basically what you're going to do is you take your bolt out, set it up on a platform or, you know, a level surface like this, and you're going to take it outside or out a window or whatnot. Use your rangefinder, get a target set up if you can, or even, you know, if you like it's a rock or a tree or whatever, find something that's 100 yards away, or get set up on something that's 100 yards away, or 200 if you want to do a 200-yard zero. But basically, I'll get a target 100 yards away, and I will literally just acquire that target in my bore of my gun, you know, looking as straight down the bore as I possibly can, get that target so I can see the target through the bore of my gun. And then I'm just gonna look into the scope and I'm just gonna dial my scope down to where it's hitting that target. And that'll get you on paper. It's always gotten me on paper. So yeah, now this beauty is pretty much ready to bore sight and get out in the range and get her zeroed and get shooting. So I'm looking forward to using this thing this fall, you know, possibly putting a tag on my first elk or mule deer. But anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful to some of you guys out there. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, you know, and appreciate y'all's support. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if this was helpful, and follow me on Instagram at The Hunter's Quest, and keep an eye out for upcoming podcasts and videos, and appreciate you guys. See you on the next one.